really the calendar or a clock, if we're looking at just a day-to-day basis, maybe checking in, midday, how am I doing? Where am I at? How's this working for me today? Or the calendar, it's the end of the quarter, it's the end of the year. How am I doing? Those agnostic static measurement tools serve a very valuable purpose. They are that light, that reminder that says, hey, we need to check in and see where we're at, because if we don't, we might redline this engine, and that might be our physical well-being, that might be our relationships, it might be our connectedness spiritually. We could be redlining so many parts of our life. I encourage you to select some areas that are meaningful and significant to you. And some of the areas that for me are pillars for life include, and this is how I would check in an individual, like 10,000, maybe 8 to 10,000 foot view of this one area. Let me do a deep dive in my physical well-being, in my relational well-being, in my spiritual well-being, in my financial well-being, in my contribution well-being. Like, where am I at in these areas? Welcome back, or welcome to the Conscious Investor Podcast, the show where we talk about health, mindset, and wealth building strategies. Before we dive into today's episode on the resilience roadmap and what this new year looks like, I wanted to remind you that the time to get in on the first weekend wish fulfillment experience taking place in February at a gorgeous beach house, it is coming to a close. So you want to make sure you head down into the show notes, click on the link, and see if this is a good fit for you. It's only limited to 10 individuals or couples if you want to come as a couple. Super Ed Steve and I have done that. It's really powerful when you can go with your partner, business partner, life partner, whatever that looks like, and have an experience like this. It takes y'all to the next level. So make sure you check out the information in the show notes. And in true form and fashion of myself, because it is the first of its kind, it's really being rolled out at an introductory price. So you want to make sure if this is something that you're like just slightly drawn towards, go look at the details. And those who know, they know that I definitely am an under promise, over deliver sort of person. So you want to make sure you are there and that you are leaning into bringing your wishes to reality in 2025. Okay, here's the deal. A lot of you are in the same boat as me where I didn't want to call myself a high performer for years. I didn't even know what a high performer was. And then two, once I discovered what a high performer was, it sort of had this whole imposter syndrome, like, no, I'm not a high performer, but I could characterize myself as ambitious, driven, highly motivated. That felt more comfortable. So before we dive into resilience, the resilience roadmap, I just want to assure you, because this resilience roadmap is really going to support those of you who are falling into that bucket of high performer, whether or not you want to own that label or not. It's just a label. You've heard Super Ed Steve and I talk about this. It doesn't make you a superhero. It doesn't make you invincible. It doesn't really do anything other than help you identify, these are my strengths and these are areas where I'm vulnerable and it could be a weakness and I need to be mindful and aware of it. So for example, just diving into that, I am so ambitious, so motivated, so process driven, like high performers often are, and like experiential and journey driven versus outcome driven, that I can just continue on a path. And and this is what has happened in 2024, is that I have just been focused, like, okay, this is what we're building up. Here's a little curve. We're going to go around this bend and scenery looks different. We're going to adjust, we're going to modify, and we're going to continue. And the journey just continues without very many rest stops. Now, I am not saying this is a healthy way of going about it, but it is how so many people, particularly highly motivated individuals, go about their journey in life. And so this is why it's really important to allow the resilience roadmap to inform you, to help you, to support you. Now, the resilience roadmap, it's my baby. I created it because I like structure and form that allows me to point to what I'm experiencing, and I can kind of see where am I at in this process. And that's the purpose of the resilience roadmap. And when we're utilizing this at the end of the year, as it is right now, right, it comes in a special way. Now, I sent out my weekly newsletter. By the way, you should subscribe to the weekly newsletter because it's really insightful. I write it. It's me writing. It's not AI. It's not this or that. It's like just a really deep, often philosophical thought that is going to allow you to connect in a more meaningful way with yourself. And in this newsletter, I actually wrote this, and I'm going to read this directly to you as I wrote it. I said, with the New Year's days away, I'm finding myself caught between two worlds. Determination to rest, recover, and renew before the year ends, and 2025 merrily vacuuming me in. And really what I wanted to say, but I didn't take the time to elaborate on, is I want you to picture right now an actual vacuum cleaner going over a floor where crumbs are all over, and how that vacuum cleaner just sucks it up. And they're just in there. I was also thinking about Legos and BB pellets or airsoft pellets. When you suck up a little 1 or 2 Lego piece or one of those little airsoft pellets, yes, if you have kids or teens in your life, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And they get sucked into the vacuum cleaner and they kind of ping around and make noise. That's kind of how I'm feeling right now. And maybe you're feeling that way also. You're like, oh, I need to rest and recover. I can see that, and the family is around, and I just want to hang out and be and do and chill, which I've done plenty of, which is really great. But at the same time, I really do feel like this whole vacuum effect of 2025 saying like, come on in, it's going to be awesome. This is going to be a cool experience. You need to make sure that you're coming here. And we're not just going to let you float on in like a lazy river type thing. We're going to suck you in like a powerful vortex. That's how this transition is feeling. I'm going to continue reading from this newsletter because I go on to say the calendar, right? And we're talking about going into 2025. The calendar is a great keeper of time, but like a clock, it's agnostic, completely detached from the associated feelings of what we're experiencing. Sometimes we can lean on the calendar so much so that we find ourselves detached, disconnected from our emotions and from any sense of satisfaction, fulfillment, joy, maybe even some of the other feelings that we really don't always celebrate, but maybe, we are maybe like being aware. I'm distracted right now. I'm disconnected, right? And so the clock, the timer, the calendar, those are static, agnostic measurement tools. And I associate those very much to the check engine light, or better put, the, change your oil light, the oil change light that comes on the dashboard, right? The oil change light comes on when we have driven X amount of miles, and they've programmed it so that it's going to remind us, hey, you know what? For the sake of the engine of this vehicle, you need to go and change the oil, or change it yourself if you want to, however you choose to do that. And so really the calendar or a clock, if we're looking at just a day-to-day basis, maybe checking in, midday, how am I doing? Where am I at? How's this working for me today? Or the calendar, it's the end of the quarter, it's the end of the year. How am I doing? Those agnostic static measurement tools serve a very valuable purpose. They are that light, that reminder that says, hey, we need to check in and see where we're at, because if we don't, we might redline this engine, and that might be our physical well-being, that might be our relationships, it might be our connectedness spiritually. We could be redlining so many parts of our life. And so taking a moment to say, where am I at? So for my own sake, and maybe this will serve you well, I created the resilience roadmap. Now, when I take people into the wish fulfillment experience, I actually do some resilience mapping. And if you've participated in that, then this is complementary. It is not the same thing. And I actually created it after the fact. And so I'm going to have to marry the two together. But here's how the purpose, right, of these check-ins. We want to make sure that we can celebrate our wholeness, our vitality, our well-being. And this is exactly how you are going to know that where you're at on the resilience roadmap. I'm going to back up one step and say, like most things, we could do an overall holistic 30,000 foot view on where are we holistically, like just in totality, where are we at? Almost like those scale of 1 to 10, where are we at? So we could use this as a overarching where are we at in life. That's helpful, but what's more helpful is when we actually evaluate specific areas. I encourage you to select some areas that are meaningful and significant to you. And some of the areas that for me are pillars for life include, and this is how I would check in an individual like 10,000, maybe 8 to 10,000 foot view of this one area. Let me do a deep dive in my physical well-being, in my relational well-being, in my spiritual well-being, in my financial well-being, in my contribution well-being. Like, where am I at in these areas? Now we can get into the actual 4 cycle of the resilience roadmap. So a lot of times we find ourselves doing one of 4 things. We're either rushing, we're in a realization mode, we're recovering, or we're in renewal. And it's like a flywheel. We're going to be in one of those locations. And generally speaking, because we are dynamic, not static, we're going to be transitioning through those areas because we're growing. And when you're growing, you're going to outgrow, you're going to go through some discomfort, and you might go through the cycle very quickly in some areas, or it might be a slow grind. That's just reality, right? So we can recognize when we're rushing, when we are restless, when we're reactive, when we're racing and just kind of going around like crazy, and especially when we're resistant to things around us. Honestly, conscious investor, this is an area where I can find myself, and I'm grateful for calendars and timers and those sterile tools that are just a check oil light, or like go get your oil change, that remind me like, whoa, why are we rushing? Let's be aware, and that takes us to the next part, right, of realization. So when we can recognize that we are rushing, then we can step into realization and say, okay, I need clarity, I need insight, I need a high level of awareness, and we can really then focus in on that. We could, like, that rushing is just that initial indicator of like, whoa, okay, I'm rushing, I'm reactive, I'm resistant. Now I need to move into that realization, that awareness. And through that awareness, we can step into and transition into recovery. And a lot of you might be feeling like you're in the recovery zone right now. And that's when we're experiencing healing, acceptance, repair, restoration. And from there, we can move into renewal. And that is when we're experiencing that wholeness, that well-being, energy, vitality. All of this rings so true because recently, this will give you an example of this chart, right? Is that I interrupt Super Rad Steve. You have heard it on the podcast. And part of me feels like I should be embarrassed by this. And the other part of me is celebrating the fact that I am aware of it now, right? And so in a sense, that first zone of rushing Well, if I'm interrupting, it's a form of restlessness. I'm being restless. I want to like speed this conversation along. Let's go. We've got other things to do, or I already know what you're going to say. I mean, there's so much that could go in: arrogance, pride, rushing, right? And so just simply recognizing I'm interrupting. I've stepped into that realization. I've stepped out of rushing into realization. And right now I am in that kind of an in between where realization and recovery are dovetailing together. We had some friends over on for dinner on Christmas, right? And I recognized that I was interrupting, and I've been recognizing this more and more frequently. And I'll put my hand on Super Red Steve's shoulder, and or maybe I'll touch his face, and I'll just simply say like, "I'm so sorry, I'm interrupting you." And he's not upset with me. He's really extremely patient with me. In this process of my awareness being raised, that's where the change and transformation is going to take place. And in 2025, maybe I won't be interrupting him in the same way, right? But then I can step into, I'm certain it's not too far away, is that, whole renewal where it's just going to be that peace, that wholeness. Like, this is all good. Maybe I interrupt occasionally like everybody does, but I'm no longer in the rushing. I'm no longer having to really keep my level of awareness on like high alert. And now I'm just able to enjoy. I want to encourage you to, instead of looking at your past year in a traditional check the box, did we meet our financial investing goals? Did we go into 5 syndications? Did we do like, instead of looking at it in that regard, I want to encourage you to say, where was I rushing? And where have I transitioned from rushing to realization, or from realization to recovery, or from recovery to renewal? And how has that shifted things in my life? How has that shifted my own self-perception? How has that shifted how people perceive me? And I recognize that by how they're interacting and engaging with me. And how is this shifting how I am showing up in contribution to the world around me? It's pretty cool. And I want to encourage you to simply step out of some of the traditional ways and step into another way of just reviewing and reflecting upon your year. And remember that all of the tools like calendars and our watches and our timers and all of that, our fitness trackers, all of those things are simply tools. They don't have any feeling. They're agnostic. They just have they're detached. They simply state the fact. Here's the data. And so you get to assign, like, how do I want to use these tools? What do I find valuable? What do I want to measure in my life? And how am I going to use these tools that are around me to support me in doing that? Conscious investor, sure, it is the end of the year, but it is not the end of growth, progress, and opportunity. And so whatever 2024 has brought for you, and I will tell you, I speak with so many people, and I love that. It's been a really rigorous, challenging year for a lot of people. A lot of people I've spoken with are in the realization mode, right? I think they're not even in the rushing mode. They're just in that realization, trying to regain some ground. And so maybe toggling between realization and recovery. And I want to encourage you as you step into 2025, if 2024 was a rigorous year, and if you had some setbacks, if you had some hard knocks in your life, like so many people did, I want to encourage you, one, you're not alone. And two, it is just the land of opportunity. And so 2025 is coming. Let 2025 keep your eye on the horizon, look ahead and look for that opportunity for renewal and claim that, bring that into your life, because God has great things in mind for you, and it is all for you. And having gone through so many different challenges in life, I want to reassure you that there has never been a single challenge, setback, heartache, anything like that has ever been lost in my life. It has always brought 100x into my life in the future. And so whatever we've experienced in 2024, and if you've had a great year, celebrate that, and step into 2025 with that same excitement and enthusiasm. But know that any setbacks we have are going to be used for our good in our life and for those around us. All right, conscious investor. That's what I have. Next time we meet, it is going to be the new year. Here's one thing I would value. It's something I haven't asked very often. I always ask, like, hey, will you follow the show and share the show? And oh gosh, when you do that, it makes my heart swell. I'm so grateful when you do that. I want to encourage you. I'm putting different content over on the social platforms, and I'm actually leaning into my personal platforms, which is a little counterintuitive, but moving forward into 2025, I'm really trying to look at the different pillars of this company that I've built. And so I'm trying to honor the message and the narrative in each of those. If you want to catch some different flavor, make sure that you're following Happy Julie Holly over on Instagram. And then you can also make sure, if we're not connected over on Facebook, let's connect over on Facebook. I put some different things over there as well. I'm here for you, conscious investor. I want to support you. That's not just me saying, empty words. It's not an empty platitude. If there is some way that you're thinking, maybe Julie will know somebody that can help me with this, or maybe Julie can work with me in coaching with this, then please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Okay. Julie@julieholly.com. Until next time, conscious investor, live in the fullness of the freedom of who you are created to be.